So
Aleph Zion.
Pesachim. Okay. So we have Aleph Zion. Reb Meir said, from their words we infer that we may burn uncontaminated truma, which is chametz, with contaminated truma on Pesach. Reb Yossi said to him, this is not an agalus. Even Reb Eliezer and Reb Yeshua concur that each is burned separately. Concerning what to do, they differ. Concerning suspended and contaminated truma, where Reb Eliezer says that each must be burned separately, but Reb Yehuda says that both may be burned together. As long as it is permitted to eat chametz, one may feed it to livestock, beasts, and birds, and sell it to a Gentile. And deriving benefit from it is permitted. When its period has passed, deriving benefit from it is permitted, and one may not fire an oven or range with it. Rabbi Yehuda says there is no removal of chametz except by burning, but the sages say he may also crumble it and throw it to the wind or cast it into the sea. Chametz of a Gentile over which Pesach has passed, deriving benefit from it is permitted, but chametz of a Jew deriving benefit from it is forbidden, since it is said, nor shall leaven be seen with you. Okay.
And actually, I just went to confirm the halacha yesterday that chametz she'avar alav Pesach is even on a tarovis of chametz. However, after Pesach, the law of bittul applies again. So if you had something, so remember, during Pesach, there's no bittul for chametz. Right, because it's one of the reasons given is that it's davar sheyesh lo matirin, because if you just wait until after Pesach, then it'll be mutar. But that's because it'll be batel. It's only because it'll be batel that it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin. So if you have chametz she'avar alav Pesach, and it became batel after Pesach, that is mutar. Okay. Gimel. Nochri sheilva es Yisrael al chametza. So what happens is the non-Jew made a loan to a Jew, and he said, "I want some security from you." And he says, "Okay, have my bottle of whiskey over here." So the non-Jew took the Jew's whiskey as security over Pesach. And what happens is the Jew defaults on the loan, and the non-Jew hangs onto the whiskey. Now the non-Jew says, "I don't even like whiskey. Let me find somebody to sell it to." And he finds another Jew who happens to know the situation and says, "Well, this whiskey is a little bit questionable because it didn't, it belonged to the Jew and it was out with the goy of a Pesach, but did it belong to him, etc." So here's what we determine: Achar Pesach mutar b'hana. So a Jew is allowed to buy this from the goy after Pesach, or he's allowed to have a l'chaim with the goy after Pesach. Okay, because why? Well, let's just take a look into this. This is a situation where either the Jew said, "This is if I fail to pay you, then this whiskey is yours as of now," or the loan already fell due before Pesach, and the guy only made the final kinyan on it, after Pesach, because otherwise it wouldn't really be much of a shaila. So if it was still owned by the Jew during Pesach, and the non-Jew didn't have rights yet, like so for example, if he only said, "Yeah, keep this as security, but you can only take it if I don't pay you back," and the loan was only due during Pesach or after, then it was still the Jew's property during Pesach, in which case it's chametz she'avar alav Pesach. Okay. In the reverse direction, Yisrael shehil v'ayisa nochri al chametza. So the Jew lent money to the goy and took his bottle of whiskey as a security. Achar Pesach asur b'hana, because now it was owned by the Jew over Pesach. Okay, so it all hinges on who technically had the ownership of the whiskey during Pesach.
You shouldn't have that whiskey over Pesach, though. If the Jew took it from the goy.
Right. So it was a pretty foolish thing for the Jew to take security of a bottle of whiskey just before Pesach, because if the goy defaults, then he's now stuck with a bottle of whiskey that he has to pour down the drain.
Right. You also mentioned before that if he made it a l'chaim with the Gentile, but
Yes,
doesn't the Torah frowns on that,
but
right?
not it's wine. You can't drink
Just on
wine with
wine?
the goy. It's only wine.
Oh, okay.
You can have a l'chaim with you can have a whiskey with the goy, no problem. Specifically wine that is an issue. Okay, chametz. I actually put that out as a little trap for you. I wanted to see if you'd react to that, but yeah.
They don't want Torah doesn't want them to socialize, so
Yeah,
even having whiskey with
socializing.
them is
Yeah. I mean, they made a whole bunch of gezeras about socializing with non-Jews, of which Stam Yainam was one of them. I mean, there are two things about non-Jewish wine. We learned this in Avodah Zarah. Is that if they actually used the wine for Avodah Zarah or had intention to, they took the wine and they poured it in front of an Avodah Zarah, absolutely asur. That's called yain nesech, asur min Torah. But then there's the other aspect, which is that even if the guy touched the wine, in fact, even if he touched an open bottle that the wine was in,
right.
that's called stam yainam. And that is a gezerah that you shouldn't socialize with the non-Jews and marry their children.
Yeah. I was one day at someone's house. I was one time at someone's house. I was at someone's house for a Shabbos meal, and he took me to the side and said, "Listen, this person is really not religious or anything like that. He's not. I don't know if he's Jewish or not, but so you just keep your eye on the wine. If they want some wine, you take the bottle and take care of it and give it to them, but don't let them touch the wine." That was I remember that a long time ago. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there are also opinions. Just a sec. So the Mishnah continues. Chametz shenafla alav mapolis. What happens if there's a building collapses or something, and there's chametz inside that building? Now, I mean, we had this situation in Florida with that building that collapsed. Also in Cholon, was it in Cholon? There was another building that collapsed. At Baruch Hashem, they had enough advance notice that they could get all the people out because they saw that the building was collapsing. So they got everyone out, and there's no loss of life, but there was plenty loss of property, and I'm sure there was lots of chametz inside there. So now, let's say it's before Pesach and the building collapses, and the people say, well, what do I do about the chametz that's inside that building? Which it's still mine. Do I have to go and find it and destroy it? Mishnah tells you, no, hareu kamavar. If it's collapsed if it's under a collapsed building, forget about it. It's already been destroyed. Okay.
right.
Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer kol she'ena kelev yachol lechapes acharav. So he's not coming to argue with the Tanakama. He's qualifying this and saying, how buried does it have to be? If a dog would not be able to dig it up, then you can forget about it. But if it's something that a dog could go after and say, that's some nice dog food, chametz dog food under there. Let me go and pull that out. That's that's something that you would have to worry about. So that gives you an idea of the kind of scale of collapsed building or whatever that you have to worry about for chametz. Okay. If somebody eats truma, that is chametz on Pesach. Okay, so now just take a step back. Remember the rules that we learned with truma. With truma, we said that if a Yisrael accidentally eats truma, what's the halacha?
I don't remember. I'm sorry. I don't remember.
Okay, so he has to pay. He has to pay it back to the kohen. Now, remember, it all hinges on whether he did it b'shogeg or b'mezid. If it was b'shogeg, then he has to take chulin and turn it into truma, and he has to give an extra chomesh. So however much he puts on an added cook from the outside. So it's really a quarter of the original. And he has to make that into truma. Takes chulin, turns it into truma, and gives it to a kohen. And the kohen doesn't have the right to refuse. He says it's if this is it's got to be replaced as truma, and it's a religious obligation. So the Israel accidentally took truma out of the world, he's got to return truma to the world. Okay, and the kohen can't refuse. However, if the Israel was mazid, he said, I know this is truma and I'm eating it anyway. And then he's chozer b'tshuva and he says, I'm really sorry about this. Then he can say, okay, so now he's got to repay the kohen for what he stole. So it's no longer that if the repayment is chulin and it stays chulin. So when he gives it back to the kohen, it does not become truma now. The mazid means that he's no longer repaying truma. There's no extra fifth. And if the kohen says, forget about it, what's it between you and me? Don't worry. Then he's allowed to waive it, because now we're talking about a monetary damage. So just to summarize again, if it was an accident, he was careless, and he destroyed truma, then it is a religious obligation. He's got to return truma to the world plus a fifth. If it was deliberate, it's a monetary obligation, and the kohen is allowed to waive it, and there's no extra fifth. Okay, so now we're going to take that whole situation of truma and superimpose it onto Pesach, where the truma happened to be chametz. So now there was some truma that somebody failed to dispose of. It was a loaf of truma bread. Somebody failed to dispose of it, and Israel comes and eats this chametz truma on Pesach. Accidentally, he didn't realize that it was truma. It could be that it actually doesn't matter whether he knew it was chametz or not. Okay, because now the fact of it being chametz is not actually important to the story. It's the fact of whether or not he knows it's truma.
Right.
Okay. So now it was accident. He suddenly realizes, oh my gosh, this was truma. Mishalem keren v'chomesh. Then after Pesach, he has to come and restore truma to the world, because there was truma. Even though it was chametz, it was nonetheless truma. And the funny thing is that if he'd seen it and said, "Ooh, this is chametz," even though he'd known it was truma, he would have had to burn it. But now that he ate it, he has, without realizing that it was truma, he has an obligation to rectify his mistake with the truma by returning some more truma to the world. So after Pesach, he'll come and take some and get some chulin and turn it into truma and give it to a kohen. However, the mazid patur mitashlumin umi dmei eitzim. But if he realized that this was truma and he ate it b'mazid, whether or not he realized it was chametz, now it's a monetary obligation. How much is that chametz worth? Nothing. The chametz is worth nothing because it's Pesach. Okay, so that truma is worth absolutely nothing to the kohen. He doesn't have to pay anything back to him because it was of zero monetary worth. It had to be burned anyway, and it's not even demei eitzim. If like the amount of that you would pay for fuel for burning, because even if you took that truma and used, you wouldn't be allowed to use it as fuel to stoke an oven, because you're not allowed to get hana from the burning, as we've learned in previous Mishnayos. So it's completely zero value, and there would be no repayment for that. Okay, of course, being that it's chametz, if he ate it b'mazid, he'd be chayav kares. But that's not what we're dealing with over here. We're now dealing just with the truma aspect. Does he need to replace the truma that came in? Okay, all good?
I'm good, I think.
Okay, Mishna hey. So here are the things that, in order to fulfill your mitzvah of eating matzah on the first night of Pesach. So what grains are you allowed to make your matzah from? Chitim, seorim, kusmin, shifon, shiboles shual, that is wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and oats. Okay. I think there is some dispute as to whether shibolet shual is actually oats. But that's generally the accepted opinion. Anyway, v'yotzin b'demai, and furthermore, it can be even you can make your matzah out of demai, that is flour that was acquired from an Amma Aretz, and you don't know whether or not he took chumas maaseh from it. Okay, why? Because we allow aniyim to eat demai, and since a person could either feed it to aniyim or he could declare his property ownerless and himself become an ani. Okay, so demai is not the worst thing in the world, and you can be yotze with demai matzah on Pesach. The maaser rishon shenitla trumasoy, and also with the maaser rishon where truma has been taken off it. This case we come across frequently when we often have all these cases grouped together. Maaser rishon that has had the Trumas Maaser taken off it, even though it was separated before Truma Gedola was taken. So even though it was the order was reversed, which it wasn't allowed to be, but nonetheless it turns out the diavad it's okay. Maaser Sheni v'hektesh sheniftu. Maaser Sheni produce and hektesh produce that have been redeemed, totally kosher for matzah. But kohanim b'chalo v'truma. And even if the kohanim receive challah or truma from Israel, and they turn that into matzah Pesach, even though Yisraelim aren't allowed to eat it, nonetheless the kohen can be yotzei with us on Pesach. Aval lo b'tevel, untithed produce is asur for anyone to eat. Lo b'maser rishon shelo nitla trumaso, and maser rishon that hasn't had truma separated from it. Lo b'maser sheni v'hektesh shelo niftu. Things that are something that Maaser Sheni produce. I presume this is talking about Maaser Sheni that is not being eaten in Yerushalayim, because lichora, if you had actual Maaser Sheni grain that was baked into a matzah and taken to Yerushalayim, I don't see that would be a problem to be yotzei on that. You can't. What you say?
You would have to eat it in Yerushalayim if it's Maaser Sheni.
If it's actual Maaser Sheni produce, it would either have to be redeemed or eaten in Yerushalayim. And this Mishna is talking about if it's Maaser Sheni outside Yerushalayim, or hektesh that have. If it's hektesh, if it's temple property, then you're not allowed to eat it at all, and therefore it cannot be used for the matzah. Chalos toda urukike nazir. Now, what happens if somebody baked matzahs with the das that it was going to be used for a korban toda or for rikike nazir? He wanted to come and bring some matzahs to the Beis Hamikdash, and then he changed his mind and said, well, I've got some leftovers, or I've got I decided not to bring the toda, or I decided, or he became tamei instead of completing his thing as a nazir. Okay, asan la'atzmo, if he baked them for himself, ein yotzin bahen, then you can't be yotzei on them, because matzahs mitzvah has to be baked for matzahs mitzvah. It has to be baked al das kain. I don't know if you've ever been matzah baking, but they keep emphasizing to you, you've got to have das, that this is l'shem matzahs mitzvah. Right, you're making it for the sake of the mitzvah. So if you're making it for a korban toda, that's not l'shem matzahs mitzvah. Okay, asan limkor bashuk. However, if he's a baker and he was making a whole bunch of matzahs that for in the Yerushalayim shuk for people to take and use in their korbanos, then he's always got in the back of his mind that he might have leftovers, and if he has leftovers, then he maybe is going to want to take them home for his Pesach Seder. In which case, yotzin bahen. So it's assumed that his das is that it could be used for anything, including for Pesach. So in which case, you can be yotzei on them. Okay.
Okay, I have to look at those.
Erevin Yud Aleph.
One who finds tefillin should bring them in pair by pair. Ram Gamil says 2 by 2. To what do these apply? To old ones, but not for new ones. But for new ones, he's exempt. If he found them tied in pairs or bundles, he must wait. He must wait near them until dark and then bring them in. But in a time of danger, he may cover them and leave. Reb Shimon says he hands them to his friend and his friend to his friend until he reaches the outermost courtyard. So to his child, he hands them to his friend and his friend to his friend, even if they are 100. Rabbi Yehuda says a person may hand a barrel to his friend and his friend to a friend, even beyond the Techum. They said to him, this should not go further than the feet of its owners. If one was reading a book of scripture on the threshold and the book rolled from his hand, he may roll it to himself. If he was reading it on top of the roof and the book rolled from his hand, as long as it has not reached within 10 tefachim of the ground, he may roll it to himself. Once he has reached 10 tefachim, he should burn it over on its writing. Rabbi Yehuda says even if it only removed from the ground by the width of a needle, he may roll it to himself. Rabbi Shimon says even on the very ground, he may roll it to himself, so the rabbinically produced matters may stand in the way of the Holy Scriptures.
Shabbos Kaf Gimel Beis.
A person may count his guests and desserts orally, but not from a written note. And he may cast lots with the children and the members of his household for portions at the table, provided he does not intend to wager a large portion against a small portion. Because of the prohibition of gambling, and Kohanim and Kohanim may cast lots for sacrifices on Yom Tov, but not for portions. A person may not hire workers on Shabbos, nor may a person tell his friend to hire workers for him. We may not go out to await nightfall as Shabbos boundary at the Shabbos boundary for the purpose of hiring workers or bringing produce. But one may wait nightfall to enable him to watch and bring produce to his friend. After Shaul stated a general rule, Abba Shaul stated a general rule: whatever I am permitted to instruct on Shabbos, I am permitted to await nightfall for it. Right. That was it.
Dalit as well.
We await nightfall at the Sabbath boundary to attend to the affairs of a bride or to the affairs of the deceased, to bring a coffin and shrouds for him. If a Gentile brought flutes for the Sabbath, the Jew may not be well with them unless they came from a nearby place. If they made a coffin for him and dug a grave for him, a Jew may be interred in it. But if it was done for a Jew, it may never be interred in it.
Okay. Masa Sheni.
Okay. Yud Gimel. Beit Shammai says he must open and empty into the winepress, but Beit Hillel says he must open but need not empty. Where does this apply? In places where they are generally sold sealed, but where they are generally sold open, the jar does not become non-holy. However, if he wishes to impose a stringency on himself and sell by measure, the jar becomes non-holy. Reb Shimon says, likewise, if one says to his fellow, this jar I am selling to you without a jar, the jar becomes not holy. If one takes Ma'aser Sheni produce from an expensive place to a cheap place, or from a cheap place to an expensive place, he redeems it at a price of his place. If one brings produce from the threshing floor to the city, or jars of wine from the winepress to the city, the profit belongs to Ma'aser Sheni and the expenses out of his household. Ma'aser Sheni may be redeemed at a cheap price, as the shopkeeper buys, but not as he sells, at the rate the money changer accepts small change, and not at the rate he provides small change. Ma'aser Sheni may not be redeemed in a lump, and if its price is known, he may redeem it according to the value of his winepress. If his value is not known, it must be redeemed according to the evaluation at the time. The valuation of one.
Evaluation of 3 people.
According to the valuation of 3, as for instance, wine that has formed a film, produce that has gone bad, or coins that have rusted.
Okay, Nida. Baptist.
Every fish that has scales has fins, but these can be a fish that has fins. There can be a fish that has fins but not scales. Every animal that has horns has split hooves, but there can be an animal that has split hooves and does not have horns. Everything that requires a blessing after it requires a blessing before it, but there can be something that requires a blessing before it does not require a blessing after. A girl who produced 2 hairs can perform either chalitza or yibum, and she is obligated in all the commandments stated by the Torah. Similarly, a boy who has produced 2 hairs is obligated in all of the commandments stated in the Torah. He is eligible to be a ben sar, amora, from the time he produces 2 hairs until the bread grows around, which refers to the lower beard. not the one for the sages replied euphemistically. A girl who produces two hairs cannot perform miyun. Rabbi Yehuda says until the black hairs appear. The two hairs that are stated regarding the
that's it. We're done.
Yeah.
Okay. Bechoros.
A Kohen is believed to say, "I showed this Bekor to an expert and it is blemished." All are believing concerning the blemishes of the Matzah offering. If a Bekor's eye was blinded, its foreleg cut off, or its hind leg cut off, it may be slaughtered by the decision of 3 laymen. Yossi says even if there are 23, it may not be slaughtered except for the one location of the dislodge. If one slaughters a Bekor and sells it, and it becomes known that he did not show it to an expert, where they ate, and he must return their money to them, and whatever meat they did not eat be buried, and it must return to them. Similarly, if one slaughters a cow and sells it, and it becomes known that it was a treifa, what they ate, and it must return the money to them, and whatever meat they did not eat, they return to him, and he must return the money to them. If they sold it as to non-Jews and gave it to the dogs, they must be paid only for the worth of a treifa. Okay. Aleph. One, on account of the following blemishes, a Bekor may be slaughtered. Its ear is notched in the cartilage, not in the foreskin. Not in the cartilage or not in the skin. Or it is slit although nothing is missing. Or it has a hole as big as a veg and it is dried up. What is considered dried up? Anything that if punctured does not emit a drop of blood. Rabbi Yossi ben Meshulam says it is so dry that it crumbles.
That's it.
Okay.
And Gittin.
One who writes Sofrim of Gittin must leave blank the space for the name of the man and the space for the name of the woman, and the space for the date and documents of loans. He must leave blank the space for the names of the lender, the space for the borrower, the space for the amount of money, and the space for the date on bills of sale. He must leave blank the space for the name of the buyer, the space for the name of the seller, the space for the amount of money, and the space for the field, and the spaces for the dates for the sale of the benefit involved. Rabbi Yehuda says invalidates all of them. Rabbi Eliezer validates all of them except for Gittin, and it's written, "He shall write for her," and specific intent for her. If one was bringing a get and lost it, if he found it immediately, it is valid. If not, it is void. If he found it in a pouch or a case and he recognized it, it is valid. One who brings a get and left him old or ill may give it to her on the assumption that he is alive. And the daughter of a non-Kohen was married to a Kohen, and her husband went overseas. I may eat treifa on the assumption that he is alive.
Truma. She may eat truma.
What did I say? Treifa. Okay.
Yes.
You eat treifa.
No, she may never eat treifa.
Eat truma on the assumption he is alive. If one sends his offering from overseas, he may be offered on the assumption that he is alive. But Elazar ben Parta said 3 things before the Kamchaman, and he confirmed his words. Concerning the people in a city besieged by an army and those in a ship tossed at sea and one who goes to be tried, they are presumed to be alive. But concerning people in a city captured by an army and those in a ship lost at sea and those who go to be executed, the stringency of the living and the stringency of the dead are applied to them. The daughter of a non-Kohen married to a Kohen and the daughter of a Kohen married to a non-Kohen may not eat of truma.
Right. So when somebody's in that safek, then we have to, in that safek position, we really have a doubt whether the husband is alive or dead. Then it doesn't matter whether it's a Bas Kohen married to Israel or a Bas Israel married to a Kohen. She's not allowed to eat truma because her husband might be alive or might be dead. And oops.
What treifa?
Yeah.
No, treifa. I could not get up this one. I just couldn't. And I went to sleep very early.
Okay. Have a lovely day.
You too. Enjoy. I will speak to you, Mr. Shem, tomorrow.
Mr. Shem. Enjoy your workman. Bye.
Thank you.